Hello, welcome to the course SJPHY3 BO3 Electrodynamics 1. The contents of this course is taken from Introduction to Electrodynamics by David J. Griffiths. In today's class, we will continue to discuss topics from Module 1, which is Chapter 1 of Griffiths Vector Analysis. The last class we discussed about the fundamental theorem of calculus, which says that integral of a derivative over a given region is equal to the value of the function at the boundary. So we have seen the fundamental theorem in the case of vector derivatives such as the gradient and divergence. In today's class, let's talk about fundamental theorem for curls. So this is the mathematical representation of the fundamental theorem for curls, which says that surface integral of curl is equal to closed line integral of the vector function. Now, what's the meaning of it? Integral of the derivative, here derivative is the curl, over a region is the surface S, is equal to the value of the function at the boundary. So if you have a two-dimensional surface, the boundary is nothing but the perimeter P. So once again, this talks about the relation between the integral of derivative and the boundary value of the given function. So if you recollect the fundamental theorem for divergence, there we have seen that a volume integral is converted into a surface integral. Similarly, here a surface integral is converted into a line integral. So you will be using these two theorems, the Gauss theorem and Stokes theorem, extensively during this year's coursework. So be thorough with these two theorems. And geometrically, what does this mean? Suppose you have a region of a positive curl. Curl refers to rotation action. So you can take surface of a whirlpool where you have a high curl at every point. Now you want to calculate what is the total rotation of the function. So you can go to each point on the surface, calculate the rotation, or mathematically you go to each point and calculate the curl of the function and add them up. This gives you the total rotation effect of the function. So in other words, you take the surface integral of the curl. Alternatively, if you want to calculate the total rotation, you just go to the edge of the whirlpool and monitor the flow of the function. So this is nothing but the line integral along the perimeter. So both are equal. Now, one thing you have to note is the direction of the integrals. So there are two options. When you take the line integral, either you can follow a clockwise path or an anti-clockwise path. Okay, so these two options are there. Similarly, when you calculate the surface integral, there are two options for the direction of the area element. So in this case, as you know, area vector is perpendicular to the given area. So you can choose direction either out of the plane or into the plane. So which direction do you take? So the bottom line is that the direction of line integral should be consistent with the direction of the area element. And this consistency is given by the right hand rule. If your fingers point in the direction of the line integral, then your thumb fixes the direction of the area element dA. For example, if you take this particular surface, the circular surface, this is the perimeter of the surface. Now, if you choose the direction of line integral in the anti-clockwise direction, place your fingers in the direction, in the anti-clockwise direction, then the direction of the thumb, which is the upward direction, will be the direction of the area element. Alternatively, if you choose the clockwise direction, place your fingers in the clockwise direction, you will find that the thumb is pointed downward. So in that case, the direction of the area element is the downward direction. So this is how you fix the direction of the integrals. Now it's possible that a number of surfaces will have same boundary. For example, take a thin ring like this, dip it in a soap solution, then you will have a thin layer of a soap film. Okay. So here surface is the soap film and this ring is the boundary. Now you can blow air from the downward side. What happens is the film gets extended. So when you look from top, it forms a convex surface. Similarly, if you blow air from the upper side, it gets extended in the lower side. So from top view, it looks like a concave surface. So you have three different surfaces, a flat surface, a convex surface, and a concave surface. In all the three cases, the boundary remains the same. So normally we know that the surface integral, the value of surface integral depends on the surface. But what we are talking about is a special type of surface integral. This is surface integral of the curve, which does not depend on the particulars of the surface. It depends only on the boundary. That's the meaning of this right hand side. So the first important corollary from this theorem is surface integral curl of V dot dA depends only on the boundary line and not on the particulars of the surface used. And secondly, from the definition of the line integral, we know that line integral over a closed path is always 0. So consequently, you can say surface integral curl of V dot dA is 0 for any closed surface. Let's do a quick problem to verify the fundamental theorem for curls. Take a vector function v equal to 2xz plus 3y square y cap plus 4yz square z cap. So you need to check whether the Stokes theorem is true for a square surface shown in this figure. So basically we need to show that integral curl of v dot dA equal to close integral v dot dl. From the function definition, you can quickly calculate curl of v. This will be 4z square minus 2x x cap plus 2z z cap. You can do it for yourself. And look at the area element dA. You have a surface in the yz plane, and if you follow the right hand rule, place your fingers along the direction of this arrow. Your thumb will be along the x direction. So direction of dA element is along the x direction, and since this is in the yz plane, the magnitude is dy dz. Okay. Do the surface integral. So you have to do a double integral, one integral with respect to z, one integral with respect to y. The limits are from 0 to 1 for y and 0 to 1 for z. So the total value is 4 by 3. Now you have to calculate the closed line integral. So the square has 4 sides, so you need to calculate line integral for each of the sides. So as always, the line element dl is dx x cap plus dy y cap plus dz z cap. Let's choose the first side. So here x equal to 0, z equal to 0. So you can put x and z 0. So in the expression for v, 2xz term cancel, and the second term 4yz square also cancel. So you have 3y square y cap. Since x and z are 0, dx and dz cancel. So dl is just dy y cap. So v dot dl is 3y square dy. When you take the integral, y changes from 0 to 1. So this is integral 0 to 1 3 y squared dy, which is 1. Similarly, you calculate for other three sides. For the second side, x equal to 0, y equal to 1. For third side, x equal to 0, z equal to 1. And for a fourth side, x equal to 0, y equal to 0. So you find the line integral value and add them up, you get the same value 4 by 3. So you prove that surface integral of curve is nothing but value at the boundary. So that's about the fundamental theorem for calculus. Next is curvilinear coordinates. So when I discussed about the coordinate system, so the fundamental problem in electrodynamics or electromagnetism is somewhere in space you have some charge or current configuration and you need to find out the field or the potential associated with this charge or current configuration. The first step is to identify the location of the charge. Okay, so for that you need a coordinate system. So depending on the symmetry, you have different choices available. So we have discussed about Cartesian coordinate system. Now, if you have a spherical symmetry, for example, you are talking about charges on a spherical shell, right? You have a spherical symmetry here. In that case, you can choose a curvilinear coordinate system, which is known as spherical polar coordinates or simply spherical coordinates. Similarly, when you are talking about current in a wire or charges moving in a wire has a cylindrical shape. So here you have a cylindrical symmetry. So in this case, you can choose a cylindrical polar coordinate system. So depending on the symmetry, you can choose a particular coordinate system. And if you want another classic example, in quantum mechanics, you learn about Schrodinger wave equation. So when you solve Schrodinger wave equation for hydrogen atom has an inherent spherical symmetry. So hydrogen atom is best solved in the spherical polar coordinate system. So by choosing appropriate coordinate system, you can optimize your analysis. Okay. So let's learn about first spherical polar coordinate system. So here you have three axes. These are r, theta and phi. Just like in the case of Cartesian coordinate system, you had x, y, z axis. Here r is the position vector of the point. This is the distance from origin to the given point. So if you take r vector as the position vector, r coordinate is nothing but magnitude of the position vector. Then the angle between the position vector and the z axis, this is known as polar angle theta. Next, you take projection of the position vector on the xy plane. So this dotted line is the projection. The angle between this projection and the x-axis, this is known as the azimuthal angle phi. So these are the three axes. Now let's quickly establish the relation between these spherical coordinates and our normal Cartesian coordinates. So this is r vector and this angle is theta. So quickly you can write the component along the z direction is nothing but r cos theta. This is straightforward. If this is r cos theta, then the other normal component, which is the projection of r vector on the xy plane, this will be automatically r sin theta. Right? If this is r sin theta, the angle between x-axis and this vector is phi. So consequently, this component is going to be r sin theta cos phi. And the y component is r sin theta sin phi. So this is x, y, z in terms of r theta phi. Alternatively, you can write r theta phi in terms of x, y, z. How do we do that? We know the definition of R. This is nothing but the position vector. So in Cartesian coordinate system, you write position vector as x cap plus y cap plus z cap. Now R is the magnitude of this position vector. So in the component form, the magnitude is defined as square root of x square plus y square plus z square. Now from the definition of z, z is r cos theta, or you can write cos theta equal to z by r, or theta equal to cos inverse z by r. Now this is the definition for r, so you can write theta equal to cos inverse z by square root of x square plus y square plus z square. Now take y by x. R sin theta term is common, it cancels, so you have sin phi by cos phi, which is tan phi. So y by x equal to tan phi, or phi equal to tan inverse y by x. So this is the relation between x, y, z coordinates and r theta phi coordinates. Now it's time now to define the basis vector. So you need to have a unit vector along each of these axes. So the unit vector along the r axis is r cap. Similarly, unit vector along the theta axis is theta cap. Unit vector along the phi axis. So this is the direction of phi. This is phi cap. So if you notice, these three vectors are perpendicular to each other. So just like x cap, y cap, z cap, r cap, theta cap, phi cap also forms an orthonormal basis, which means a given vector I can represent in terms of this orthogonal basis vector. So I can write a general vector A as ar cap plus a theta cap plus a phi cap. Just like in Cartesian coordinate system, I write a equal to ax x cap plus ay y cap plus az z cap. Now we need to represent r cap, theta cap, phi cap in terms of x, y and z. So how do we do that? So we know the definition of the position vector x cap plus y cap plus z cap. Expand x, y, z in terms of r, theta and phi. So this is r sin theta cos phi x cap plus r sin theta sin phi y cap plus r cos theta z cap. If you take a small variation in the direction of r vector, you can define this as dr vector, which is nothing but dou r by dou r into dr. So basically this dou r and dr cancel, you have a dou r here. So this is the small change in the direction of the r vector. Now if you want a unit vector in the direction of r, you need to divide dou r by dou r with the magnitude of dou r by dou r. Maybe the printing is not very clear. Here the numerator is the r vector and denominator is the magnitude of that. So when you divide a vector with its magnitude, you get the unit vector in that direction. In the same way, you can define theta cap as dou r by dou theta divided by modulus of dou r by dou theta. And phi cap dou r by dou phi divided by modulus of dou r by dou phi. So we know the expression for r. So quickly calculate what is dou r by dou r. So take the derivative of this with respect to r. This is straightforward. Basically all this r get cancelled. You have sin theta cos phi x cap plus sin theta sin phi y cap plus cos theta z cap. Now you need to find out the modulus of this vector. There is an easy way of doing that. You know that dot product of a vector with itself gives you square of the magnitude, right? So take dot product of this with respect to itself. So dou r by dou r whole square. So how do you calculate the dot product? Just take the product of similar terms. So you have sine theta cos phi, take its product with itself. So you have sine square theta cos square phi plus sine square theta sine square phi plus cos square theta. Take the first two terms, sine square theta is common, take it outside. So you have sine square theta into cos square phi plus sine square phi, which is 1. So 1 into sine square theta, sine square theta. And here you have cos square theta, sine square theta plus cos square theta equal to 1. Now similarly calculate dou r by dou theta. So take this expression, find out the derivative with respect to theta. So you do this, derivative of sine theta is cos theta, so you get this expression. Then take its dot product with itself, you get dou r by dou theta whole square. You get this expression. You need to simplify this. Search for common terms. R square cos square theta is common for first two terms. So take it outside. So you get r square cos square theta into cos square phi plus sine square phi. So the term inside the bracket is 1. So you have r square cos square theta plus r square sine square theta. So r square is common. Take it outside. You get r square into cos square theta plus sine square theta, which is r square. Same way, calculate dou r by dou phi. You get this expression. Calculate dou r by dou phi whole square. You get r square sine square theta. Now you can calculate r cap, theta cap, and phi cap. So what is r cap? Dou r by dou r divided by modulus of dou r by dou r. So modulus of dou r by dou r is 1. So r cap is nothing but sine theta cos phi x cap plus sine theta sine phi y cap plus cos theta z cap. Similarly, theta cap is nothing but dou r by dou theta divided by modulus of dou r by dou theta. So square of the modulus is r square, so modulus is r. So basically you divide this expression with r, you get theta cap equal to cos theta cos phi x cap plus cos theta sine phi y cap minus sine theta z cap. Similarly, this is dou r by dou phi. You need to divide this with modulus of dou r by dou phi. Square of the modulus is r square sine square theta. So modulus is r sine theta. So divide this expression with r sine theta. You get phi cap equal to minus sine phi x cap plus cos phi y cap. So you have the three basis vectors which are orthogonal. So one thing you have to remember, the main difference between r theta phi and xyz. So in this space you can choose any point. The direction of x cap, y cap, z cap remain the same. On the other hand, if you choose another point, suppose I choose a point here, call it as p prime, and if you look at this point, you will find that the direction of r cap, theta cap and phi cap are different at this point. Okay. So this is the major difference between the Cartesian coordinate system and the spherical coordinate system. The direction is fixed for Cartesian coordinate. On the other hand, the direction of the basis vectors change as a function of position. But irrespective of the position, the relation between x, y, z and r, theta, phi, it remains the same, and also these three vectors remain orthogonal to each other. Once you identify the relation between the Cartesian coordinate system and the polar coordinate system, it's time now to represent the displacement given in Cartesian coordinate system in terms of the polar coordinates. In Cartesian coordinate system, A small element of displacement dl is typically written as dx x cap plus dy y cap plus dz z cap, where dx is the displacement along the x direction, similarly y direction and z direction. Now in polar coordinate system, you need to calculate a small element of displacement along the r direction, similarly along theta direction and phi direction. I call them as dl r, dl theta and dl phi. Let's first calculate dl r. So this is the r vector. A small change along the direction of r is nothing but dr. So dlr is dr. Similarly, suppose you have a small displacement along the direction of theta. So this you can call as d theta. What is the line element corresponding to d theta? So the line element is nothing but this arc length, right? So if this is r, the angle is d theta, the arc length is nothing but r d theta. So r d theta is the displacement along the theta direction. Similarly, for the phi direction, okay. So if you recollect our previous diagram, you have the r vector, its projection on the xy plane is r sine theta. Okay, so this is the r sine theta vector. Now you have a displacement along the phi direction. Phi is the azimuthal angle, so d phi is the displacement along the phi direction. Now you want to calculate what is the line element corresponding to this displacement. The line element is nothing but this arc length. So if r sine theta is the length, d phi is the angle, the arc length is nothing but r sine theta d phi. So dl phi equal to r sine theta d phi. Now you can write a small element of displacement dl as dr r cap plus r d theta theta cap plus r sine theta d phi phi cap. Once you define the line element, it's straightforward to define the surface element and the volume element. Okay, so if you recollect the Cartesian coordinate system, a volume element d tau is defined as dx into dy into dz. So similarly, in the case of spherical polar coordinate system, d tau is dlr into dl theta into dl phi. So substitute for this, you get d tau equal to r square sine theta dr d theta d phi. Coming to the area element, the definition of the area element depends on the orientation of the area or the surface. For example, if you take a sphere like this and you want to do an integration over the surface. So on the surface, the radius is constant. So basically the only things which change are the theta coordinate and the phi coordinate. So consequently, the definition of the area element dA1 is dl theta into dl phi. And what's the direction? Area vector is always perpendicular to the surface. So this is the direction of the r vector, so it's given by r cap. Substitute for dl theta dl phi, so the area element is r square sine theta d theta d phi r cap. On the other hand, if you are choosing a surface along the xy plane, so what's the specialty of this plane? The angle with respect to z axis is constant here, so theta is constant. So the only two directions which change are the r direction and the phi direction. So consequently, the area element is defined as dlr into dl phi, and the direction is along the theta direction, theta cap. So this is r dr d phi theta cap. So depending on the orientation of your surface, you can define the area element. Finally, what are the limits of the axis? So just like the Cartesian coordinate system, r represent position, so it varies from 0 to infinity. Phi is the angle on the xy plane, so one complete circle is from 0 to 2 pi, so phi changes from 0 to 2 pi, and theta is the polar angle with respect to z axis, it changes from 0 to pi. Now you may be tempted to think that theta also changes from 0 to 2 pi, but if you look closely at the geometry, you will find that if you take theta from 0 to 2 pi, you will be counting the points twice. Okay, so to avoid repetition, you need to pay attention to the limit of theta. It changes from 0 to pi. Let's do a quick problem to get familiarized with the spherical polar coordinates. Find the volume of a sphere of radius r. So I'm sure you don't have to do any computation. This is straightforward. This is 4 by 3 pi r cube. Nevertheless, we can do this assignment to get familiarized with the polar coordinates. Okay. So volume is nothing but volume integral of the volume element d tau. Okay. So the volume element is nothing but r square sine theta dr d theta d phi. This is a triple integral. You have integration with respect to r, theta and phi. Let's apply the limits for the coordinates. R changes from 0 to capital R because this is the radius of the sphere given. Theta varies from 0 to pi and phi varies from 0 to 2 pi. Let's segregate the terms now. So you have 0 to r squared dr, then 0 to pi sine theta d theta, and 0 to 2 pi d phi. Okay. So integral of d phi gives you phi. Apply the limits. Integral of sine theta is minus cos theta. Apply the limits, and integral of r square is r cube by 3. So once you apply the limits, you get 4 by 3 pi r. So that's about the surface and volume and line elements of spherical polar coordinates. In the next class, we will discuss about the vector derivatives, the gradient, divergence and curl in spherical polar coordinate system. Thank you.